The last video we were going over everything we got done on the engine, but I didn't really, kind of glossed over the accessory drive because I knew the video was going to go too long. So what we're going to cover today is the upgrades that we made, which is getting rid of the original Ford power steering pump for the Saginaw pump that they ran on the Econolines. It's the same pump that Chevy and I think Dodge ran on a lot of their trucks. It's just a better pump. For whatever reason, Ford put them on the vans and not the trucks. I'm assuming because the Econolines were more of a fleet vehicle, but whatever. It's a very easy swap to do, but you do need the accessory drive bracket off of a van. So you either need the 302 and 351 are the same. So if you're doing the swap on a big block, you got to get the bracket off the big block van, and if you're doing a swap on a small block, you got to get it off a small block van, or you got to get it off a van with a 300. You got to find it the right one for your platform. But it's actually a pretty easy swap. You're just putting that pump on, and you're changing the high pressure line, which I'll show you here shortly. And then after that, we're going to jump right over to the 3G alternator swap, which is also pretty easy to do. Just some minor trimming on the accessory. You don't have to swap the accessory drive if you don't want to. You can use yours, and I'll show you how to modify it so it fits. This one for me is a bigger one. There was a TSB that Ford put out because the alternators, there was something wrong with the alternators, and they were causing the plugs on the back of the alternator to melt, and that was your charge cable. And what was happening was cars or trucks would actually catch fire. And there's quite a few stories. If you do some search on the internet, you'll find it. There's actually stories of people who came home from work and found their truck had, or their garage or the house had burned down, and it was because their alternator caught fire. So it's pretty wild. That was like that seals the deal for me. Like I immediately, when I first learned about this, and it was years later when Ford released the TSB, but and I'll look it up and I'll post the TSB number. But it was years later when Ford actually released the service bulletin for it. So we don't want anything to do with that. The 3G alternator is a very, very simple swap. And it's a far superior alternator, better than even the 4G alternators. It's a great alternator. So, and you can get them in all sorts of different power levels. So, I will as soon as I'm going to cut here shortly, and I'll show you everything in Saginaw, and then I'll show you how easy it is to put the 3G in, and then from there we'll move on and get the rest of the engine bay complete so we can get this thing to run.
All right, so we're talking about the Saginaw power steering pump conversion. So it's actually a fairly simple swap, but you do need the accessory drive because the pumps are not interchangeable on the brackets, right? So the very first thing we're going to do, of course, is we're just going to get our AC compressor. If you have AC, if you don't, it's just an idler. But either way, we got to get this up and out of the way. So I'm gonna go grab, looks like a 10 mil. I'm gonna go grab some tools. We'll unhook our clutch switch, pull them bolts out, and we'll just swing the compressor up out of the way. All right, compressor is just kind of thrown up out of the way. So all we have to do now is 1, 2, 3, and then the nut off of this stud here. And that's actually it. The drive will come off the motor. Now what we do have to mess with is our lines. So got your high pressure line. Excuse me. So you have your high pressure line coming off the pump, going direct to the steering box, and then you have coming out of the box, we have our cooling line. This is low pressure, just goes to that stupid loop on the frame and comes back, and it's difficult to see, but there is a piece of hose back there, and it's just a hose clamp because it's low pressure. None of this stuff matters. So the Saginaw pump, the pressure port's in a different place, which means we have to swap this hose. So even though you can see this is visibly loose and probably leaking right here, the hose is junk. It doesn't matter. We can't reuse it. So I'm probably just going to nip this off, and then the same thing with the low pressure line. I'm just going to get down there with some dikes, and I'm just going to nip it off because we're going to replace. If you're in this far, you have to replace this one. You might as well replace the low pressure one. So I'm just going to cut them, and then we're going to come over here. We'll grab a socket. We'll take these 3 out, and then we can zip this nut off, and then we'll just be able to take the whole thing right off the motor. Okay, basically it now. Get this last one out, and then we can just grab the whole pump and slip it right off, and out we go. We're dripping oil all over the place. Okay, so here's our whole pump and bracket, and then here's the new one for comparison. So you can see the AC compressor is actually the same size bolt and all that stuff. It should be the same bolts, if I recall correctly, to bolt this to the motor. So it's just that and you can't see it because the pulley's on. It's just the mounting pattern, the hole here, the offset of the pump, the shaft, and the offset on the pulley is a little different to get the belt to run in the right place. But none of that matters because, you know, you're going to get the bracket from the van, you're going to get the pump for the van, you're going to get the pulley for the van, and then this is going to go right in trash, and that'll be the end of that. So from there, the only thing you have to do, which we'll get into here shortly, will be taking the rest of our high pressure hose off the box, and after we put the pump in, we'll obviously, I cut my low pressure hose. All you have to do is, and of course I would recommend replacing this because you can see how oily it is, and it's gonna get soft and leak sooner or later. So if you're doing the swap, I would recommend replacing the hose, but whatever, it's up to you. Hook this up, set your pump in place, put our high pressure line on, and done. And it's pretty simple, but we're gonna go one step farther because this junky little power steering loop that Ford did down there on the frame rail, in my opinion, is that inadequate. Might be fine for a stock truck going down the highway, but this is not a stock truck. You know, tires are a little bit bigger, which is a little more taxing on the power steering system, and then on top of that, this truck's probably gonna end up off-road, let's be honest. So I have every intention on taking this whole loop out, throwing it in the trash, and then we're gonna get a power steering cooler off of another truck, or an Econoline. I might actually have one on the rack. I have to go look. We're gonna take this out. These are, if I recall correctly, this is just 5/16 double flare. So like you can just buy 5/16 brake line. We'll verify this once we go back to the assembly phase. But we're just gonna basically take this off, and we'll make a new one up that comes through the frame. And then somewhere over here in this space, which, you know, I'll have the grill off then, we're just gonna mount a power steering cooler, and then same thing, we'll return back through, and we'll just connect right up here, just like that. It's piece of cake. All right, so this is power steering cooler off of, I think it's Super Duty. If I recall correctly, you know, you can get various sizes off of F-150s or Super Duties. I've seen smaller ones, I would say about this size here, from here to here, in Econolines. So there's a ton of different options. I'm pretty sure this one was Super Duty. So the plan is to try, Ford ran it down real low, but you know the grill in those trucks are huge. I'm gonna try and shoehorn this thing in here somewhere. So let me get the grill off, and we'll see what we can do. Grill removed, and you can see there's mountains of room for this thing. I'm not 100% sure yet what I want to do, but I do know that this is our straight shot to the steering box, so we're probably going to bring our cooler lines in through there. So I think I want to come up with something that mounts this. I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna come up with something. I want to keep it on this side of the radiator because you will note that there is no transmission cooler in this Bronco, and that's because this thing came from the factory without the towing package. But of course, we're gonna add one. So I actually have this behemoth here, which is out of a newer Ford. I'm just gonna say 94. It's the OBS body style, 94, 97, and this is an OEM transcore. This is just what Ford put in. Actually, yeah, look at that. There's the part number, F4. So this is, you know, 94, 97. We're just gonna say transmission cooler, but it's actually really cool because you see this hole right here. Well, if we slip a captured nut in, transcooler goes right there, and then those two screws there, and then that one, we're actually just like sheet metal screws straight direct from the factory. So that's going here. So this is going to solve all our transmission cooler problems. That thing is huge, going to do a job great, but also means that we have to fit our power steering cooler in on this side. So I'm going to mess around a little bit. I don't know, maybe I can fit this one in, or maybe we will look into using the Econoline one because it's a little bit smaller and easier to package. But I would like to fit this one in here. So I'm going to tinker for a little bit, see what I can come up with, and come back and show you what I got. We got to get a captured nut in here. And if you're like me, you've probably parted out a truck or two over the years, and you know, save the hardware, and now you got a bucket of bolts in the corner just in case you need that weird oddball metric size or something stupid, because you know half the truck is standards, half the truck is metric. And I had that too, and then I realized how much I had when I built this thing. And this is, whew, it took me a while to organize this. This is nothing but bolts that came off these trucks. So, and conveniently, this one right here has a whole bunch of captured nuts, and this one I think is gonna fit right in here. We're gonna find out here shortly if I can stuff this guy up in the space, and we're gonna try and get the, I bet you I have the little sheet metal screws you need for holding the transcooler in. I'll bet you they're in one of these as well. So I'm gonna rummage around, but yeah, this right here, man, it took me, you know, a couple days after work to put this thing together, and they're just little organizers from Harbor Freight. But this has been a lifesaver because I got everything, man. I got, you know, look, you know how many trucks I parted out to get this many seatbelt bolts, but more than one or two, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, so enough chit chat. I'm gonna try and get this transmission cooler mounted, and then we're gonna move on and get that power steering cooler mounted. So here's our power steering cooler loop all removed from the truck. And if you look at the fittings that go into the steering box, they're actually just 3/8 tubing double flare, just like brake line. So we're not going to use any of that at all. I have a brand new piece of 3/8 tubing from the store. We're just going to shorten this up, put a bend in it, and use this to feed our cooler. All right, we got our Reman power steering pump. We got our Saginaw bracket off of an Econoline, and I got a pulley for it off of eBay. So we're pretty much good to go here. I'm just going to slap all these parts together and we'll throw it on the truck. Okay, let's put this thing in. So there you have it. Pump is on the block. Uses all the same bolts that the original power steering pump used, so not exactly a difficult swap. Now, the last piece of the puzzle is this. This is the power steering line off of the same Econoline. So, shaped very differently, different fittings. But it's okay, it's plug and play. It'll fit right up to the Saginaw pump. It'll fit right up to the Ford steering box in the factory location. So you don't, no reason for any kind of fancy high pressure lines or any of that stuff. You can just straight up use the OEM power high pressure line. So let me throw this thing in, and then I'll show you what I'm doing for a power steering cooler. Okay, there you have it. Saginaw power steering conversion complete. You know, it is literally that simple. Like it bolts right on using the same bolts. You can see the Econoline power steering hose routes a little differently, but still connects to the steering box in the factory place. So that's pretty much it. So the only other things of note is if you get a Reman pump, it doesn't come with a cap. So I'm gonna have to order a cap online. And since I'm not reusing the original cooling loop down on the frame, I have my cooler circuit coming off the steering box here, coming forward to this guy. So I came up with a mount for the Super Duty power steering cooler. I basically just cut the brackets off because it used to come up and then come over, and it would have been like this weird mount like on a 45 like here. So I just sawed them off and came up with this simple bracket, which is You know, just a piece of flat stock and a couple tabs, but that's it. She's in there to stay. So that's pretty much it, man. Power steering system upgrade complete. All right, so one of the things I want to do while we have the accessory drive all apart working on the motor is I want to upgrade to the 3G alternator. You know, these guys don't make a ton of power, and in factory form they were known for this plug back here failing and starting fires. And I can't tell for sure. I feel like this one may not have been replaced. Just looking at the way the wiring harness is done, that might actually be original, which is pretty wild because it was a big recall about getting these done. And you know, you buy a replacement alternator, it comes with a new plug, specifically because the old ones were failing. So there's a very good possibility that this has never been apart. This is original from 1990. But anyways, doesn't matter. It's all going away. We're going to do the 3G swap. It's super easy to do in these trucks. Super easy to do in the newer ones too, but I think it's actually easier in these. But anyways, I'm going to get the alternator out, and I'll show you how to pull the accessory drive off. And then once the accessory drive is off, I can show you what you have to modify, because there is one little rib that you have to grind down to fit the bigger case in 3G, but I'll show you that once it's all apart. Camera apart. How about that? And pushing is stuck. Pushing is stuck. Come on. Come on. Give me the friggin' alternator. Up. Now, just unplug this guy. Careful, careful. And then this one. Maybe this may have actually been repaired. Not that it matters, because we gotta replace all that anyway. Ooh, maybe it wasn't. That's pretty gross. Okay, doesn't matter. All right, alternator is out. That's it. Throw this thing right in the trash. Now, we have to modify this ever so slightly to fit the 3G. But I'll show you that on the bench, because it's got to come off the motor anyway. So, should be 1 and 2. No, not that one. 2. And I think there's a third one over here. So, not too bad. So, get this ripped apart. I got to mess around with the smog pump, because that's probably gonna have to pull that off. So let me get this all apart, and then I'll show you what we got to do to get the 3G in it. All right. So here's our accessory drive, right? Your smog pump will be down here. Your alternator's up here. Tensioner's here, right? So this is the alternator that we want to run, which is the large case 3G. Now there's large case or small case. You want large case, right? And which is easily identifiable by these holes right here. So large case has 2 large ones, and then the small case has smaller holes, 3 or 4. I don't actually remember anymore. But it doesn't matter. You want the large case, right? You can get them 95 amp, 125 amp. There's a couple other options out there. I think you can go and you can custom build them. Go 200 amp, which is what we did for the big block Bronco. And you can get you can order custom ones from like PowerMaster, whatever. There's a ton of options, right? We don't need any of that, anything crazy, because we're not going nuts with a crazy sound system. We're, putting a monster, winch on the front of this like we did the other one. So I'm probably just going to go for like an OEM 125 amp or something like that. But until I get my hands on one, which will be later this week, or hopefully, we're just going to mock it up with this one. So this is my trail spare, which is why it's all muddy, but it doesn't matter, right? We just need to use that for mock up so we can make this thing fit. So it's actually pretty easy to do. You know, if we just kind of cinch that guy down, you swing this up, you can see it's almost there. We're so close. We're so close. And we're actually hitting this rib right here. You can kind of see when it swings up how the case contacts there. So all we're going to do is we're just going to come in and we're just going to do that and then feather out on an angle or something. You can do this in the truck with a grinder. Obviously I have it off because I'm doing the timing chain, but that's it. So I'm going to grab some safety glasses and my grinder, and we're going to take some of this down, and I'll show you how easy it is to make this fit. All right, so there you have it. You know, grind it down a little bit, and then I kind of feathered it out a little bit because I didn't want a sharp corner here. But that's it. That's all it takes. Alternator swings down in place now. There's not a lot of room, but you don't need a lot of room. The alternator doesn't move. So that's it. You know, that's how you put a 3G alternator in a truck. Done. End of video. Well, I mean, okay, a little bit of wiring to do, but this is all we have to do to physically fit it. So next thing we'll do, we'll get this in the truck, and then I'll show you how to modify the wiring to make it work. So I got my bracket ground. It's all cleaned up now. Looks good. I've got my replacement alternator here ready to go. And I also have this pigtail, which is the factory wiring harness for the alternator out of, I don't know, I'm just going to say 97 F250 because that was one of the last trucks I parted out, and it's probably where it came from. So I'm just going to swap the charging cable in the truck over to this. If we have to splice any wires, we will, and if I do, I'll show you which ones. But you don't necessarily have to go this route. You know, you don't have to try and scavenge one of these out of a junkyard, because you can still get this pigtail brand new. Ford still makes them. So in some cases, sometimes when you buy the alternator, it comes with a new pigtail. I know PowerMaster includes a pigtail with their alternators, but this one was just something I bought off Rock Auto and didn't come with it. But it doesn't matter because we have it. So I'm just going to use this one. If you're doing some kind of huge, you know, 200 amp or something along those lines, you can't use this anyway because the fusible link would not last, in which case you can use something like this, which is just a maxi fuse holder. I bought a pack of these off of Amazon, I think, maybe eBay, I don't remember. And then you just throw these these big fuses in there, and then you can make your charge cable whatever gauge is required. But since this is, you know, factory 130 amp, and this is the factory harness for it, it doesn't get much simpler than that. So this is what I'm going to use. So let me get this on, get the alternator in, and then we'll take a look at the wiring. All right, alternator's in. There is one small thing I forgot to mention. That's this bolt here. On the 2G series, the alternator's threaded. When they went to the 3G series, they threaded the bracket, which means we don't have any threads here. It's not a big deal. It's just a 3/8x2 bolt with a couple washers and a lock nut on there. So done, installed. Now we got to look at our wiring. So here's our harness. Obviously, you know, our charge cable's not going to work. So just tracing this over, we just got to disconnect this connector here, and then we can take the fusible link off. Should be this guy right here. So I'm going to pull this off, and we'll set it up on the bench, and I'll show you the differences between the 2G and the 3G harness. So here's our two wire harnesses all dissected. So 2G over here, and then the 3G here. And what you'll see is they're actually very, very, very similar. In fact, these plugs are actually pinned out exactly the same. Yellow here on the left is for fusible link, and just for power. And then this one here, white with a black stripe, jumps from the regulator to the stator, same thing as it does here. And then the green wire here is signal out to your charge indicator in the dash. So these plugs are wired exactly the same. Where the differences come is in this little guy here, because on the 2G it jumps over to the plug that supplies all your high current for charging, and on the 3G it's this. So we can just take this harness, we can just put this harness in, we don't have to change anything, it'll work. But if you don't have that harness, you need this plug, because you have to modify your 2G plug. You got to change that wire and shorten it and put this little connector on. So the only other variable is this here. This is the wire in the 2G that goes into the wiring harness for your charge light in the dash, and for some reason mine's cut. So I'm glad I opened this harness up, because I have no idea what happened there. But conveniently we have it here. So I'm going to repair this one using parts for this one. If you don't have a 3G harness out of a junkyard, it's not the end of the world. All you have to do is get your hands on that plug and just nip this wire right here, that white with black stripe, put that on, and then you're basically done, because you can throw the rest of your wiring harness in the trash and then make a new charge cable. But I'm gonna fix this. I'm putting this in. I want it as OEM as possible, so I'm going to cut a pigtail out of here, splice it into here, fix this so it's all good, re-lume it, retape it, everything, and we'll throw it in the truck. All right, wiring harness is done, pigtail repaired, everything's loom taped, ready to go. Okay, charge cable's hooked up, charge indicator wire is plugged back in, so that's done. So now what we got to do is take this, plug it into the alternator, and 3G swap is complete. There you go, 3G swap is complete. You can see the charge cable and everything just kind of wraps down and comes out back here, and off you go, just like factory. So that's pretty much it. Changed the accessory drive up. This is a combination of pieces that never came together like this in a vehicle. So, you know, Saginaw pump, fine, that's running the Econoline belt, but then it didn't come with this alternator. And then when they did the 3G in the trucks, it wasn't this. In the vans, it wouldn't have been this style. So long story short, we have to measure for a new belt. That's actually why I have this pulley on without the fan clutch for now. So I'm gonna put this camera over to the side a little bit, and we're gonna grab something, and I'll show you how we're gonna measure to figure out what belt we need. All right, I think we're just gonna use a piece of wire. Wire doesn't stretch, so this should give me a pretty accurate reading. We're going to measure it with the tensioner all the way, because I need to see absolute maximum length for the belt. So first thing I'm gonna do is get this thing wrapped around, and we will see exactly how long the belt can be and still hold. So we get this routed. Nice. Here. And then right there. Okay, let me go see what this measurement comes out. So now I'm going to do the same thing again, and we're gonna see what the length is now, and that will tell us how short the belt can be and still fit on the truck. And once I get that measurement, we will compare the two and figure out what length belt we actually want to run on this truck. So that's it. Belt installed, Saginaw swap, and 3G alternator swap done. We settled on a 84-inch long belt. My measurements I came up with was 83 at the minimum and 85 and a half at the maximum. Any shorter than 84, you're gonna have a hell of a time getting it on here. But I didn't want to go too much longer than that, figuring the belt's gonna stretch a little bit over time. Realistically, probably the 84 and a half would have been fine too, but this works good. Plenty of tension on the tensioner there, so that should be good to go. So Saginaw swap done, 3G swap done. We got our power steering cooler in. That pretty much covers it. We got our 3G alternator swap. That's all complete. We got our Saginaw power steering pump in. We got our Super Duty power steering cooler done and mounted. So that pretty much finishes this off. So I think we're going to call it here. Hopefully I covered everything. If I did miss something, feel free to comment. But it's both swaps are honestly about as simple as they look, and trust me, you'll be thrilled. You'll wish you did them sooner. So I think next video we are going to actually finish up under the hood. I need to finish plumbing the cooling system, and we're going to charge the AC system, and then we're going to get a gas tank in this thing, and hopefully get it running. So stick around. Should be, the end is in sight. So thanks for watching.